Hey, welcome to The Explainer. Today we are diving into some brand new research that might just change the way you look at your grocery list. We're talking about those common food preservatives that are in, well, thousands of things we eat, and what scientists are just now starting to figure out about them.
It's a pretty heavy question, right? We count on these ingredients to keep our food from going bad, to make it last longer. But what if there's a hidden cost? Well, a couple of huge new studies are making us face that question head on.
And here is the big headline. Researchers in France just dropped two massive studies with some pretty startling results. They found a clear link between eating more of certain preservatives and having a higher risk of developing both type 2 diabetes and some types of cancer.
And we're not talking about a small study here. This research pulled its data from something called the Nutrinet Santé cohort, which is this huge public health study that included over 100,000 people. That massive number of participants is exactly why these findings are making such big waves.
And get this, they didn't just check in once. The researchers followed these 100,000 people for up to 14 years. They were tracking everything, what people ate, how their health was doing, for a really, really long time. That kind of long-haul research gives the data some serious weight. Okay, so before we get into the numbers that are making everyone's jaw drop, let's back up a step. Let's figure out what we're even talking about. What exactly are these preservatives, and how in the world do you even spot them on a food label?
Basically, preservatives do, well, exactly what you'd think. They preserve food. They're added to stop mold and bacteria from growing, to slow down spoilage, and to make it so a product can hang out on a shelf for weeks or months instead of just a few days. They're pretty much the backbone of our modern food supply.
So how do you find them? You've probably seen those E numbers on packaging, right? Especially in Europe. Well, the ones we're really focusing on today are in the E200s. Those are your classic preservatives. You'll want to keep an eye out for specific ones like E250, that's sodium nitrite, or E202, potassium sorbate. And trust me, we're going to hear those names again in a minute. And where are these things hiding? Well, pretty much everywhere. Think about the middle aisles of the grocery store. We're talking cured meats like bacon and deli ham, a lot of cheeses and yogurts, packaged breads, cakes, sodas, ketchup, jellies, you name it. If it's in a package, there's a good chance they're in there.
Okay, so we know what they are and where to find them. Now for the part that's really making headlines, the numbers. What did the scientists actually uncover?
First up, let's talk about the diabetes study. The researchers compared the people who ate the most preservatives with those who ate the least, and they found a 47% higher risk of developing type 2 diabetes in the high-consumption group. I mean, that is a huge jump.
And things get even more specific when we look at the cancer study. They were actually able to connect specific additives to specific cancers. For instance, a higher intake of potassium sorbate, remember that one? E202, was linked to a 26% increased risk of breast cancer.
And they found another one, sodium nitrate, E250, which, is the stuff you find all the time in processed meats. Well, a higher intake of that was associated with a 32% increased risk of prostate cancer. You start to see these specific connections, and honestly, the picture it paints is, well, it's pretty concerning.
So let's take a look at the bigger picture from that cancer study. You can really see how different additives were linked to different things. Potassium nitrate, which is a close cousin to sodium nitrate, was connected to a 22% higher risk of breast cancer. And what's wild is that even things that sound kind of harmless, like sulfites from wine or acetic acid from vinegar, showed a 12% increased risk for overall cancer among the people who consumed the most.
Okay, deep breath. These numbers are a lot. And this is a really, really important moment to pause and talk about what this science can, and maybe more importantly, what it can't tell us.
You see, this kind of study shows a correlation. It's a pattern. It's like noticing that ice cream sales and shark attacks both go up in the summer. One doesn't cause the other, right? A third thing, hot weather, causes both. This study shows that people who eat more preservatives also get sick more often, but it can't prove that the preservative made them sick.
And yeah, other scientists are jumping in to say exactly this. Professor Tom Sanders points out that folks who eat a lot of preservatives might also be eating more processed meat, more sugar, more salt, and fewer fruits and veggies in general. Scientists have a term for this, confounding variables. It's like trying to figure out if it was the rain or the wind that knocked over your plant when both were happening at once.
So just to be super clear and responsible here, let's lay out the study's main limitations. First, like we said, it's observational. It shows a link, not a cause. Second, the group they studied was mostly women, and on the whole, they were actually healthier than your average person, so these results might not apply to everybody. And finally, let's be real, it's super hard to perfectly measure exactly how much of this stuff a person eats every single day.
So this all leads to a huge question, right? If there are these potential risks, who's in charge of this stuff? What do the official regulators have to say?
Well, it turns out there are big government agencies like the Food Standards Agency in the UK and EFSA in Europe, and their entire job is to keep an eye on this stuff. They are constantly reviewing the latest science to make sure the additives in our food are considered safe. So for every additive, they set something called an acceptable daily intake, or ADI, basically a level that's considered safe. But the science is always changing. For example, the International Agency for Research on Cancer already calls ingested nitrites probably carcinogenic. Now, that's not because of the nitrites themselves, but because once they get inside our stomach, they can turn into these other nasty compounds called nitrosamines. And just last year, Europe's own food safety agency said our current exposure to those nitrosamines is a health concern. So yeah, the regulators are definitely paying attention.
So after all of that, the alarming stats, the scientific fine print, the rules and regulations, what does this all mean for you and your shopping cart? What's the takeaway?
Let's hear directly from one of the lead researchers, Mathilde Touvier. She puts it really simply. Try to favor fresh, minimally processed foods and just limit these extra additives where you can. It's not about being perfect. It's just about tilting your choices a little.
So let's break that down into 3 simple, totally doable steps. Step 1, just get curious. Start reading the labels on your food. Step 2, whenever you can, reach for whole foods. You know, stuff that doesn't really need a long ingredient list. And step 3, and this is the most important one, don't panic. This isn't about throwing everything out. The key here is just awareness and making small, thoughtful changes over time.
So I'll just leave you with this one question to chew on. Now that you know all this, what's one small swap, one tiny change you could make on your next trip to the store? Because at the end of the day, when it comes to our health, it's amazing how all those little choices can add up to something really big.